Despite the name, this movie actually has nothing to do with water. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. As part of the 2021 edition of my 13 Nights of Halloween series, today I'm going to be talking about the 1998 slasher sequel, Halloween H20, 20 years later. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Halloween H20, 20 years later, stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Josh Hartnett, and Adam Arkin, and was directed by Steve Miner. Set 20 years after the events of the first two films, this movie follows Laurie Strode, once again played by Jamie Lee Curtis, as she tries to survive another Halloween night of terror. 2 decades after the night he came home, Michael Myers is back. But this time, he's not going home, opting instead for a California vacation. H20 is the 7th film in the franchise, but it functions like the 3rd. It's a direct sequel to Halloween 2, and completely ignores the existence of Halloween 3 through 6, thereby also disregarding everything to do with Thorn. This movie was a fresh start, a redo and rejuvenation for the franchise, allowing it to get back to the franchise's roots and continue without the convoluted mythology set up by the previous 3 films. And what better way to return to the franchise's roots than to bring back the original Scream Queen herself? This movie is steeped in love and homage to the original 1978 Halloween, not to mention other horror films like Psycho. Laurie's return is obviously a huge part of the Halloween homage, but there are plenty of other connections and callbacks scattered throughout the film as well. The fantastic opening not only recalls the quiet, suspenseful tension of the first film, but it also features Nurse Chambers reprising her role, as well as a small nod to Loomis. Donald Pleasance's death in 1995 prevented his involvement with this film, but it was nice to see reference to the character that had been in just as many films as Michael Myers himself. Even beyond the opening sequence, there are plenty of fun callbacks to spot. The school lesson about fate as Michael Myers stands outside, several repeated lines of dialogue, even the pattern of Laurie's injuries. But for all of the homage present here, this movie couldn't feel more different from the original film. In fact, aside from a few moments, like that opening sequence, H20 doesn't even really feel like a Halloween movie at all. It's the first of the Myers films not to take place in Haddonfield, and it feels noticeably strange as a result. Not just strange because it necessitates Michael to drive halfway across the country, but also because of the atmosphere. The boarding school setting isn't awful or anything. In fact, it's prime for a teen slasher movie. But there's just something so weird about seeing Michael Myers stalk around campus rather than through the neighborhoods of Haddonfield. Even the story's split focus feels unlike any other Halloween film. It's partly a teen slasher, but also partly an action-fueled character drama. Neither component is bad, but neither of them particularly feel like Halloween. I suppose the teen slasher part comes the closest on that front. It plays out in a fairly standard and predictable way, harking back to the slashers of the early and mid-80s, but also possessing a slightly more modern feel that was clearly influenced by Scream. This teen storyline isn't compelling or interesting from a character standpoint, but it does yield some unique Michael Myers kills and the handful of gruesome moments in the film. What I find the most compelling here is the other side of the story, the character-driven component that focuses on Laurie Strode. We get to see the impact that the events of that Halloween night back in 1978 had on her. She's got PTSD from her experiences. She has nightmares about it, and hallucinations that Michael's always just behind her. She's heavily medicated, and further self-medicates with excessive alcohol. She's overprotective of her son, and constantly paranoid and vigilant, especially around Halloween. This is an idea that gets explored again in the 2018 Halloween sequel, but it was done here first, albeit in a slightly different way. Unlike the previous Halloween films, this is Laurie's story, not Michael's. He's in it, but she's the focus. So when we get the inevitable showdown between the two, it's very satisfying to watch. H20 is a quick-moving film. It's on the shorter side, like many of the franchise's films are, but is very well paced. Once Laurie and the setting are established, the film kicks into gear and doesn't let up again until the end. Interestingly, very few explanations are given here, perhaps as a bit of a jab to the ridiculousness of the over-explanation present in the Thorn trilogy. We get a tiny bit of Laurie's history since the second film, but Michael's reappearance is left a complete mystery. But because the focus is on Laurie, the lack of explanation here really doesn't bother me. This movie has got some really nice cinematography and a few moments of classically suspenseful tension, but it's the presence of Laurie and the return of Jamie Lee Curtis to the franchise that elevates this movie and makes it feel worthwhile. There's no doubt that if her character had been replaced by somebody else, this would have been a much more middling addition to the franchise. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro is definitely Laurie Strode. Not only is it wonderful having Jamie Lee Curtis back in the franchise, but her character is easily the most interesting thing about this movie. The film's still a slasher, so it's not like it does some massively deep dive into her psyche or anything, but I think the exploration it does do of the impact of her teenage experiences is really interesting. It makes for something much more compelling than if it was just some random new person thrown into her position. Plus, even beyond the character expansion side of things, we've got existing history between her and Michael, which makes for a very exciting second half. The second pro is the cinematography. I didn't really notice it as much the first few times I saw this film, but I was struck not only by how nice it looks, but also by how much it evokes the feeling of the first film. The opening sequence is one of the highlights of this movie for several reasons, but the cinematography is one of the big ones, with its long tracking shot movement and suspenseful lighting. This film came out only 3 years after Halloween 6, but the difference in visual style is immense. Whereas the previous film almost feels like a made-for-TV movie at points, this has a much more modern look to it, and was clearly designed for theatrical release. On the con side, the biggest issue is that this movie just doesn't feel like Halloween. I know that might sound like a whiny complaint to have, especially after how absurd and varied some of the previous sequels have been, but if it wasn't for Laurie and Michael, this could have been any slasher. It's set on the campus of a California boarding school, so we don't even have Haddonfield as a setting to ground it with that Halloween feel. Honestly, even Michael doesn't really feel right, and seems like he could have been interchanged with any slasher for this story. So it's Laurie that holds this all together, and it almost feels like it could have been a spin-off film rather than a true sequel within the franchise. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Halloween H20 20 years later, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Halloween H20 20 years later 3 out of 5 paws. Even though it doesn't really feel like a Halloween movie, this is a fun little slasher steeped in homage that brings back the original Scream Queen in a new and interesting way. I would recommend Halloween H20 20 years later to fans of the original Halloween. This doesn't have nearly the same feel as that movie, but if the idea of seeing what Laurie's up to 20 years later sounds interesting to you, then there will probably be enough there to keep you interested and entertained. And if you were underwhelmed by the previous sequels in the franchise and felt like things were getting too bogged down by the whole Curse of Thorns storyline, you may enjoy this one a bit more, because it proceeds as if Halloween 3 through 6 never happened. If you liked Halloween H20 20 years later, I would recommend the original 1978 Halloween. That probably sounds like an obvious choice, and it is, but it's a fitting one. That was not only the film that kicked off the franchise, but also serves as the point of reference for just about everything involving Laurie in this film. If you like the teen components of this movie, you might want to watch Scream. It's another 90s teen slasher with a similar look and feel that more cleverly tackles and rejuvenates the genre. And if you were interested in Laurie's struggles here and the idea of her dealing with the events of the first film, you should check out the 2018 Halloween. That's another Halloween sequel that focuses on her paranoia and inability to move on from the night in 1978. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Halloween H20 20 years later? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie that takes place at a boarding school? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.